Welcome to the Dental Brief, the world's direct, right-to-the-point podcast produced to get you the information you need to learn and grow your practice. To learn more about our guests and find links to information discussed on our show, visit our website, dentalbrief.com. On to today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dental Brief. I have with us today a very special guest. I love it when we have dentists on the program. I love it when we have dentists on the program that are here to help other dentists grow. Say hello, Dr. Richard Kramer.
Hi, everybody. Hope it can be helpful.
Yep. Now, this is an audio broadcast. I see you got an LA Dodgers hat on. Our audience isn't going to see that, but I'm guessing you're in sunny California. Is that correct?
I am, but I'm actually a Red Sox fan.
Is that right?
Yes, I am.
The hat was on sale, huh? Or you just use it to disguise yourself when you go to Sox games?
Well, I had to make some choices, right? And by the way, didn't think we were on video, so there you go.
Yeah, we're not, like I said, we don't broadcast.
Yeah.
It's nice we can use it to cue off one another. So,
sure.
Dr. Kramer, again, thank you for being here. I want you to kind of tell our audience quickly, how did you become a dentist? What made you want to get into dentistry?
Well, I actually began, in dentistry because I thought it was a good career, enjoyed working with people, ultimately worked with children because that was something that I knew that would be enjoyable. And you can make an impact on a child's dental future if you handle it correctly. And the goal is to make positive impacts so that their adult dental life is well controlled and they have a good feeling about looking after their oral health.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I mean, I think those are terrific reasons to choose this profession. So I know that at some point you made the jump from, being a dentist, working in, or I should say practicing dentistry on a daily basis in practices to consulting. Tell me what made you decide to make that leap?
Well, I actually I taught at Boston University early on in my career and realized I really wanted to do private practice. I enjoyed the practice building side of dentistry and started as a solo practitioner and grew it to a group of 10 partners and 5 locations and 150 staff, and essentially accomplished what I wanted to. But along the way, did consulting on a part-time basis, basically did practice administration, and got very involved in successful practice building because that was the route that I took to do it. And you learn from other people's experiences and your own. And I learned that too many folks really in dentistry do not have a plan. And so they can't anticipate what's going to happen in their future. And sometimes by the time they decide, it's a little late to shape your career. So I began speaking, writing, and offering consultations on how to practice build, how to assess partnerships, how to assess associateships, how to structure agreements, how to ensure clarity so that it meant success for all parties involved.
It makes sense to me. So, you've done it. You've walked the walk, right? You've been there. You talk to dentists all the time. You've got years of experience in doing this. Why don't you tell me, what are the, either we can talk more about the plan or anything else that you want to talk about, but what are some problems that you see that practices are having that they're just, not able to build that joyful, happy practice that we all think, there's so many of us think is unobtainable. Tell me, what do you see?
Well, essentially, just to begin with, if there's clarity of an understanding what you're trying to achieve, you have a much better roadmap to success. A lack of guidelines almost inevitably leads to unsuccessful practice growth. And I've been taken aback by how many negative experiences people relate about growing their practices. Many people are concerned about taking in associates. And for associates, the question is, what exactly are you looking for? So I've approached it from the standpoint of what really guidelines should you follow if you're a dentist, a practice looking to take in an associate, and vice versa. If you're an associate seeking a dental practice, how does this meet both your immediate and long-term needs? And it all begins with establishing a growth strategy in a practice. If you're a practitioner, there's nothing wrong with remaining a solo practitioner throughout your career, enjoying creating a practice and the people and the staff, and then moving on. But for a lot of folks, it's not a tidy transition. You don't necessarily move from building a full busy practice, which meets your needs at that stage, to when you want to wind it up, or you want to slow down, or you want to have options, and now you're tied to it. It's not an all or none principle. So if you have a plan, you can determine if your strategy is growing the practice, then you can consider taking in an associate. But there's a variety of reasons why you might do that. Perhaps you want to reduce your number of working days. Perhaps you want to begin to establish a retirement timetable. I usually suggest starting this process early on in practice because it's incremental in terms of how you prepare. Do you want to maximize your productivity and therefore minimize your fixed overhead costs? Do you want to essentially have a transitional strategy from the outset? So those are the reasons why, most people should at least consider what their long-term plans are.
Sure.
I sort of, in some of the articles I've written, I've divided the profession into three categories. The first is Dr. Fresh. He's out of school, whether you're an associate or you're a partner. Basically, all you want to do is be able to generate income, be able to support a family, perhaps get a home, a mortgage, and employ people and do good work in the career you've chosen. Once you do that, you get to Dr. Prime. Dr. Prime essentially is in the prime of their career. So likely they have a family, they have a busy schedule, they are traveling, they are involved in organizations, they're administering their practice, and they're busy. And their time outside the office is valuable. And they're not really considering what's going to happen at the next stage for a lot of people. By the time they become Dr. Golden, that's in their golden years, now they're beginning to determine that they perhaps want to slow down a little bit. They have a staff, they have a very busy patient load. They are a little concerned about bringing in an associate because there's obligations and there's complications. And by that time, they're not quite sure what to do. So for many of the individuals, they actually don't want to fully retire, but in a perfect world, they'd like to work perhaps 2 days a week, 3 days a week,
Sure.
and be able to maintain their practice.
Yep.
Are they trying to basically grow their practice by having other folks in it that draw referrals into the practice? Do they have an obligation to their staff to keep them busy full time? Most staff requires 5 days a week work in order to maintain their incomes.
Right.
And if the dentist does not want to work 5 days a week, it's a bit of a dilemma because you do develop an attachment to your staff and an obligation to them and their families.
Right. Yep.
So you're often caught in between a rock and a hard place. You just don't know where to turn, and it's a little late to start growing your practice where perhaps people referring to you or your patient load is starting to age a little bit. So I always found that when you get started early and you bring someone into your practice with clarity where this is going, then you're much more apt to be able to exercise your professional plan rather than having to respond once you've lost some of your options.
Sure. Yeah, that makes, absolute sense to me. So, we what I think the hard part is kind of identifying what stage of that career that you're actually in, right? I think people kind of get a little confused there, but then also when do you reach out for help, right? So many people, and it's more and more people are trying to go it alone, right? And I've heard the expression, and I really appreciate it and like it. You know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, right, go in a group, right, go together. So let's talk about that kind of like going far. How do you know when you need to reach out? How do you know when you need to talk to or get a mentor, a consultant, someone who's been there, who's done that, who has experience with that? When do you know you need to make that call?
Well, I really think in terms of a practice, I think at the very outset, for example, where do you want to locate? Are you close to your home? Are you far from your home? And to give you an example, do you want to associate short-term, long-term? Do you want to find an opportunity where there's a long-term plan, which includes a partnership option or a joint ownership option? And if you started out early, you don't find yourself tied to something which doesn't work for you.
Sure.
So as an example, a young associate comes out of school, is very happy to get an associateship, and particularly in a city that I'm living in, LA, where travel takes time, and
Sure.
I lived in Boston, and it would take me 30 minutes to get to and from work every day. Do you want to do that? And you invest the first 2, 3, 4 years of your life building equity in an area that you really are not planning on living in. So now you're committing yourself to a practice where it doesn't meet your long-term needs.
Sure.
So it starts by identifying what your goals are. If you're a dentist who wants to build their practice, and it may be competitive in that area, any good area has competition. You may work as an associate on an interim basis, which meets the needs of a particular practice. And in many cases, it's corporate dentistry, where you're traveling long distances.
Yep.
But you establish in your local community where your personal contacts, your professional contacts, all these things are going to help build a practice for yourself and a lifestyle where you're not spending all your time traveling to and from offices. The other part of that is, how are you able to service your patients on an emergency basis? When an emergency arises and you're an hour from the office you're working in, you're going to have to be traveling back and forth if you want to provide that emergency service to your patient load.
Sure. Right. I mean, that makes total sense. I don't think it's something that I think people actually think, well, it's, my first job, or, it's not that big of a deal. I'm going to, I'll travel. I don't mind driving for a while, or I can listen to a book on tape, but then 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and it becomes a bit of a grind. So I got
the other part of that, Patrick, is, and then what happens when you make all these contacts through just being neighbors, or your child's school, or other factors, other organizations. And now people, want to come see you, but your office is an hour away.
Yeah.
You've lost the opportunity to benefit.
You have. And I'll say too, we're talking about associates right now, but let's also, real quickly mention that, if you own a practice and you're looking to bring in an associate and they're looking at a 30 or 40 or 50, 60-minute commute, you need to think about that too, right? Because you may end up with an employee who ends up being very dissatisfied with their work, not because of you, not because of the culture, but because of their drive. So definitely something to think about. I want to ask you I want to ask you a 3-part question, if you will. I know KramerDentalConsulting.com is the URL, by the way. I encourage our audience to check out the site. But if somebody's looking to hire a consultant, what are the top 3 questions that a dentist should ask that consultant to start to figure out if it may be a fit? I know there's dozens of questions that they should be asking, but what would you say the top 3 are off the top of your head?
Well, I think I would answer that by saying the first question the consultant should ask the client is, how can I help you? what are you looking for? Is somebody looking for a specific manner of dealing with clinical issues, staff training issues, or are they just trying to develop their own roadmap for success? They have a long-term goal. They're not quite sure how to get there. So the individual should ask, of course, state what they're looking for and ask the consultant if they think they can help. Is this your area of expertise?
Sure.
Secondly is essentially what length of process will this be? Is it an ongoing process, or essentially is it upfront instruction and guidelines, and then the individual moves on their way? And of course, thirdly would be, which is always a factor, is how much will this cost me? How can I do that? So, that's why on our website, we offer webinars, we offer an initial free consult to determine if an individual feels that we can be helpful.
Right.
But, I think one of the issues too, you had mentioned it, and I don't want to forget, is when you are hiring an associate, it's very important to determine what their goals are. Are they looking for a short-term associateship and build their own practice? Are they looking for an associateship that leads to a partnership? And if so, what's the game plan? What's the formula? Is there clarity in how this agreement is structured? It takes a long while to incorporate an associate into a practice. You yourself have to decide whether your physical facility can handle it.
Sure.
How are you going to do scheduling? Are you wanting to cut back, or are you really wanting to work full time? And then the staff has to adjust to it. There is always a challenge when a new individual is in a practice. And finally, how are you going to allow patients to see the associate? Not everybody wants to see the associate. They want to see the principal.
Yep.
So these are very important areas, and you can spend an awful lot of time and not really have a clear picture where you're going. If you happen to be the associate coming in and you're fairly new at this, the principal should essentially try to have the conversation and isolate what both individuals' goals are, and then a very clear picture. So one of the things that I did, because I was on my own for 5 years in a 850 square feet of office space.
Yeah.
And when I took in my first associate, and I knew I wanted to have an associateship leading to partnership. And then we grew it into a multidiscipline practice. But there was a written agreement, and what influenced me at that time is a colleague of mine, an extremely successful orthodontist, who took young people in, and the young people did not see the value when it came time to buying in, and didn't know what they were buying in for, because they felt they contributed to the practice being built. So unless you have clarity up front, then everybody down the road is very hard to negotiate. But you can at the outset, that there's a very clear picture and timeline. There's a timeline for how you're going to do this. So I structured my own agreements. I took it to my lawyer at the time, who was in a group who himself didn't have proper legal agreements, and structured agreements that had a roadmap and evaluation process that included anyone who buys in and anyone who sells out. And that process has been there for many, many years. And the purpose here at the end point is always the patient. What is best for the patient? How are they going to accept security and stability? Because if you have transitions where new people are coming and going all the time, then that speaks to the quality of the individual who's going to attend that practice. Many people want stability when they go see a professional, especially in dentistry.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. I want to remind our audience again of your website URL. It's kramerdentalconsulting.com. dentalconsulting.com, Kramer with a K, Kramer, dentalconsulting.com. Encourage our audience to check it out. Take advantage of the free consultation. Meet Dr. Kramer, see how he can help. Dr. Kramer, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been nice meeting you, Patrick.
Yeah, same.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. Did you know you can weigh in on today's topic on Facebook? Search The Dental Brief on Facebook or visit our website, dentalbrief.com, and just follow the link. We look forward to having you join us again on another episode of The Dental Brief.